Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Maine Department of Education virtual professional development training. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Today, we are very lucky and I'm happy and excited to be able to tell you that joining us today to talk about National Geographic resources, online resources, and using them in the classroom, we have Sarah Bailey from South Portland High School. She is a Nat Geo certified educator. She is a former teacher leader cohort member of mine, which means she spent a year of training with me. She's presented at NCSS, and in November, she led a teacher leader webinar already series with us already. So Sarah's a veteran presenter. We're also joined by Faye Gore, a former CS4 colleague of mine, who is now the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for Education for National Geographic. She is a national leader in social studies, education, geography, and we are very happy and privileged to have both of them here today. I will turn it over to Sarah then for the rest of the way.
Thank you, Joe, for the introductions. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We know that this is quite different circumstances than we had originally planned, but we are hoping today to get out some really great information to you and some really useful tools that you'll be able to use in your classroom. But also National Geographic has been doing a ton of stuff to help support at home. And so we'll give you some resources and some learning tools that you can not only use in your classroom when we return, but also that you'll be able to push out to parents that will encourage your students to continue the learning process. A lot of it's low tech, some of it's no tech at all, but definitely lots and lots of great stuff that we have to offer out for you today. So as Joe mentioned, my name is Sarah Bailey. I am a South Portland High School social studies teacher. I am actually the department chair. I have been at the high school now for 12 years. Go Red Riots. It's such a privilege to be able to teach at that school, and absolutely missing my students at this point. And hoping to get back to the classroom. We know that we will be, of course, returning in the fall now. I am a National Geographic certified teacher. I had gone out to NCSS and learned about the process and was absolutely thrilled to know that National Geographic had these opportunities for teachers and what it entailed and the amount of resources that they had available. There's over 4,000 classroom resources, which we're going to get into some of them today. I am a cohort teacher under Joe's training, some awesome opportunities with those, tons of resources that you can utilize in the classroom. So definitely would encourage teachers to take up that opportunity as well. National Geographic has lots of opportunities going on while you're at home teaching currently, but then also throughout the school year that does encourage educators to become certified teachers to represent National Geographic. They also have different courses that you can take as well. I just got done taking a climate change course as a social studies teacher. I will be speaking to kind of what that entailed as well, but lots and lots of wonderful opportunities that National Geographic has to offer out. And of course, the big one is their massive fellowship, an opportunity to be able to travel the world and learn about different cultures and different environments and so forth. So I will let Faye take a moment and introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Sarah. I am super excited to be here with you today. I will be behind the scenes supporting Sarah and Joe. She is certainly the main attraction and you are in very capable hands. I will be in the chat in case there are any questions that you have that might pop up, but I'm just happy to support. I'm actually, as Joe already articulated, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, but we have our Northeast Regional Director that's on maternity leave, and then we will probably be hiring somebody else to take her place. And so I get the privilege of also supporting you for a few months until that process happens. So if you have any questions afterwards, certainly Sarah will be your main point of contact in Maine, but if you have additional questions or just want to say hi, I'll put my email address in the chat and you can reach out to me as well.
Thanks, Faye. So good morning. If there are any questions that arise as we're going through, feel free to drop them in the chat, or also feel free to ask at any point. The purpose is really just to get you these resources, get them in your hands. Maybe start planning out some things for the future, start pushing them out in your classrooms. Currently, right now, there's tons of online teaching that are going on. And National Geographic is really trying to make an easy process for teachers, but it's really about the heart of getting geography into the classrooms. And so, as I mentioned, National Geographic has a classroom resource homepage, and that consists of over 4,000 plus resources that they have available to you. These lesson plans are literally start to finish. The materials are there for you. There's all kinds of background information about how to put it into the context of your classroom, and then it's divided out by grade level. The nice piece about all of these resources is that, yes, they are online, but you also could print off the materials and give them to your classroom to use while you're actually in the class. You can read through the materials and so forth. So we're going to do some overview of different online resources that are available for teachers. We're going to talk currently about the at-home learning that can get pushed out to parents to help students understand the social studies aspect of it, tying in all that wonderful geography, the learning into it, being able to look at maps, being able to tie in science and religion and so forth. We are going to talk a little bit about what we have as our Explorer Classroom. That's going on right now. It's an awesome opportunity for kids to get online and be able to be involved with an actual Nat Geo Explorer, with the potential of sitting at home and personally asking questions and being on live camera with it. We'll talk about hashtag Teacher Strong, which is a movement that Nat Geo currently has going on. We'll look at a new website that has been designed for usage at home called Wide Open School. There are 12 plus companies that have come on to help support all this wonderful learning, and they have designed it in a really nice, tight package, organized group that allows you to do some probably not traditional learning in the classroom and at home. We'll take a look at RealTime Curriculum Project that is coming from a Nat Geo fellow, and then some awesome educator opportunities that we are offering out as well. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and taking an hour out of your day on this lovely rainy day. And we'll get started. So as I mentioned to you, we have classroom resources available through National Geographic. The Nat Geo classroom resources are organized by grade level, by subject, and the really nice piece about these is you literally can go into this, type in your subject, and it's right there for you. And so these classroom resources, I'll just give you a peek of what they look like. Here you have an opportunity to click on what type of resource you would like to input. I'll show you a couple of them and give you an idea of what they look like. And again, you can change it for the grade and then the subject itself. And all of these links that I am going to share today with you are available on the actual posting for the presentation itself. So one of these options that you have is an activity. And so they offer activities and articles, there's collections, and of course we know National Geographic has these phenomenal photos that are at the hands of us to use in our classroom as resources. Along with all of these resources that are available, as I mentioned, you can print them off, you can send them out to your students electronically as well. So it is going to hit your students that do have technology and that currently don't have technology available to them. So the first activity that I'm just going to just show you as an example is a cool one called Down to the Last Drop. And you'll notice that right off, it does say the grade. It'll tell you what subjects it covers. And National Geographic really tries hard to make these broad connections between science and between social studies, between geography, and how to utilize it in the classroom itself. And of course, when we look at these components, being able to make any connections to other subjects is going to help just enrich that learning for students. So this one here is kind of nice. This activity just gives you an example of different type of water sources that people have access to. I usually start this off when we start looking at our climate change unit, which actually will take us through my freshmen who are world history students. We've really revamped out to encourage that learning, that rich environmental components from National Geographic. So one of our pieces that we examine out is water scarcity. And so we've talked globally about what it looks like. We talked locally what it looks like. And we also talk about things like farming. And so, for example, this activity, of course, starts off with a picture, but then you come down here and it's got all kinds of great stuff about how to teach about it, the objectives that are behind it. There's vocabulary. No prior knowledge needed, no prior activities. So you could send students blind into this activity to use it as an intro to whatever unit you're going to go through. And then it actually will have all kinds of activities to do with them as well to work through the units and suggestions that you might be able to use. When we try to introduce learning into the classroom, it's always important to give students an opportunity to get some background. As educators, you know what it's like. Some of your students are coming in with knowledge. Some of them don't have any at all for different subjects. And so we want to try to even that playing field as much as we can. So one of the great things that National Geographic has is articles. In different articles, again, they're going to be by grade level. The context behind it is really going to speak to that grade. So you don't have to worry about vocabulary being above their heads. You, again, if you think that you've got a class that's a little more advanced, you could use that high school reading level. If you have a class that's definitely mixed, try a middle school reading, and then have students discuss out what they were able to get out of it from sitting in small groups. And so this one here is called the Silk Road. Again, starts off with a beautiful picture, and then National Geographic has just given background information about the Silk Road. Again, enriching that learning, just helping students to get some background contextual information. This information you could use later on within the unit and say to students, hey, do you remember when we first started our unit? What are some vocabulary words that you were able to remember about the Silk Road? Start building up a word wall, and then talk about kind of that background, lay those foundations so that they can move directly into an actual unit itself. National Geographic also has out what are we calling collections. So a collection at home, one of their most popular right now, this one in particular, is their learning at home. So this one here has really tightly packaged out a bunch of activities that students in grades 6 through 12 can do in their remote learning environment. These are definitely activities that you could push out throughout the school year itself. And then you'll be able to go in, you can type in the topic that you're looking for. There's information here about mathematics, there's backyard biology, ecology, all kinds of different components with this one here. And if I go into the cultural identity one, for example, it does look like it's going to have me sign into my library. So let's see if it does an automatic sign in, hopefully. Okay, perfect. Looks like it did. Sorry. So this collection here is great because it has a lot of different resources available to you in one small condensed package. So if you're looking for background information about culture, about identity, we use this in my classroom, for example, to start our year off, having students really start to understand what their own cultural identity is. We do an activity where students basically create a shoebox, and they put stuff on the outside of the shoebox of how they think people see them, and then in the inside of the shoebox is how they see themselves. And I don't have the students put their names on them. They can use pictures, they can use words and so forth, and we display them around the classroom. And it's an opportunity for students to kind of go through and guess out who their classmate might be. And then throughout the year, we revisit those ideas. And so we start talking about how we make assumptions about cultures, and how we envision cultures being versus how cultures actually exist. So these collections are really nice, because they do provide out background information. There's videos attached to them as well. There's photographs, there's maps, and then there are also activities to do as well. And so I highly encourage you to check out these collections. There's a great one that just got introduced on the voting process as well. And so when we talk about putting geography in the classroom, we always want to talk about a sense of us and where we are, and then talking about others that are around us. We usually make connections a lot of times on kind of those parallel lines. If I were to pick you up and move you, let's say, to Portland, Oregon, would it look just like it does here? What would be some differences? What would be some similarities? Would you be able to survive with just the things that you have? And then how if I took you and I moved you down to Chile, the clothing that you have right now, what you have for knowledge, would you be able to survive in that climate? And so there's really nice things that are being brought together with geography and just different twists on that tradition of here's a map, sit down, label out all these places. You're going to memorize latitude and longitude. There's really depth that's involved in learning about all of these National Geographic opportunities that are being presented out. The information on infographics, I'm not sure if any of you have ever used these in your classroom or not, but these infographics, oh, I'm so sorry, you're losing power. Hopefully it will stay on. These infographics are really a great way for students to kind of come together and present out information in a really colorful and articulate way without using a ton of words. And so National Geographic has some great ones. If you're looking to incorporate some more science into your classroom as well, NASA has some beautiful infographics. Canva is a great way for students to produce out infographics. I actually had students do them when we were looking at geographical changes to Greece. We have been looking at how climate change has actually changed Greece historically. And so they looked at kind of ancient Greece versus modern Greece, and then they picked different components and looked at it. So they looked at pollution, they looked at wildfires, they looked at fishing, and produced out these beautiful infographics that are in our classroom. So an example of an infographic that National Geographic has, this one's for where farming began. These are printable resources that could easily be displayed around your classroom. If you're teaching about ancient civilizations, talking about the introduction of different farming techniques, where these grains would have been located. If you do anything with, for example, with guns, germs, and steel, looking at Jared Diamond's concept of the production of crops, domestication of animals, this would be a great resource to start with. There's an infographic on the Korean War, always considered to be the forgotten war, as we know, not really a war in itself. And it talks about, it talks about the human cost to it, and in comparison to the United States, the cost of the conflict itself. And it works through the economic cost to the Koreans. And by entangling their country in with ours, it helps us to further understand those geographical ties, that when we go in to help countries, when we go in, there's always some kind of loss that ends up happening due to war, loss of lives, loss of money, being able to try and maintain the country as a whole. And so this infographic is a great way to display that out. The last one that I want to share out for infographics is the path to the U.S. citizenship. As we know, Maine has a tremendous amount of people that are coming in with a variety of different ethnic backgrounds. And we talk a lot about, this great path to them getting citizenship and what it means for them. And in South Portland, that's quite a few students, it's quite a few parents who are going through this, and kind of through this, Candyland monopoly aspect of it. it has gone through. You can see the dice up top and the little figures and so forth, just the actual path that they have to take out. So kind of a fun way to say, you know, hey, did you know so-and-so's parents are going through right now, and they're going to go and get their citizenship, and have an open conversation about what citizenship process looks like. There's also one about the political process and what that looks like as well. Excuse me, whoops. So that's a great one to utilize. The last couple examples, there are nice lesson plans, there's maps, and there's actual units that you can go into. And I'll talk a little bit about the unit in just a moment, because there's a great one that they put together for students and looking at the virus, the coronavirus that's out right now, and how to approach it with students and even with your own children potentially at home. Lesson plans, this is one of them that I used before, the political borders and the human impacts. The political borders is a really fun one. You could utilize this in your classroom if you were looking at the Korean War, if you were looking at the Vietnam War. You could have students grabbing one of National Geographic's massive map makers. If you don't know what those are, these are really cool maps that you either can print out. They're almost desktop size, or you can print out in full sections of different parts of the world in 8.5 by 11 sheets. My students just got done, or they were in the middle of their ancient Rome project. We used these map makers to basically print out a huge, it's almost a 6-foot wide map of Europe, current Europe. We put them all together. The students colored them out by basically the ancient Roman Empire, so that they could see what the ancient Roman Empire would look like by current Europe standards. And then we went through and we put in goods that were traded. We looked at the trade routes. We looked at different routes that the army had taken, but those are really fun ones. Then what you could do potentially with those maps is take it and put this example of a resource in the political borders. Ask your students, you know, how do people go through and decide out where borders actually exist? What plays into borders being set on, you know, a physical map? So you know the cultural features of the area itself, the diversion that's being created. So this is one of my favorite ones to use. It is a grade 6 through 8. I use it with my 9th graders. But it talks about, you know, these different sectors and what plays into the decisions that are made. So National Geographic's really taking time and really taking consideration to making sure not only do students get good background information about stuff, but that they're thinkers and they're active in the classroom. And that's what we always hope for, is that we put it back on the students, that they're asking great questions, that we've got them involved, and hopefully that it actually will go further than where we actually started with it. And sometimes we, of course, know that that diverts us into a whole nother topic, but always wonderful to see that light come on for our students. There are maps, so not only kind of your traditional maps that National Geographic offers out, looking at, you know, the different areas where they exist as. You could toss out blank maps for your students. But this one in particular, it looks at the Electoral College. So very important once we come up to our elections that are going to be taking place. It goes through what the current Electoral College looks like. You know, why do some people get more votes than the other? How does that affect our state? You know, does it cause us to lose? Does it cause us to be a winner? So lots and lots of great opportunities, particularly with this map. But then National Geographic does also have other maps available to you. So it's not, again, your traditional take a peek at this map, here's what's going on. This one here, great for looking at the introduction of colonization, goods and services that were moved between different areas. You then could start looking at reasons for Europe deciding to go into new territories, having to look at alternatives for resources once they kind of expel out the resources that they had and the reasons for traveling. And the last one, as I mentioned, for kind of examples within the classroom resources, are these units. And so menacing microbes is kind of a fun one that students could be working through right now. There is definitely biology behind it, but there's a lot of geography that got tossed in this, human geography, physical geography. I find myself trying to incorporate those more and more as we're looking at trying to make connections with it. And so this one in particular actually goes through and it talks about different types of bacteria. And it covers, as you can see, students will explore behaviors of specific diseases and the ways in which the government, communities, organizations, and individuals can respond to outbreaks of each. And this is a great one you could even toss off to students now and say, you know, hey, here's what's going on with the virus. Here's what we know about it. Let's backtrack. Let's take a look historically at what's been going on. National Geographic also has a great resource that looks at the influenza of 1918 versus what's going on with the coronavirus and how do we interpret those, what similarities were going on then, what are some differences, and absolutely amazing. If you look at Kenneth Davis has a ton of information about what had occurred in the state of Maine when the Spanish flu broke out. And he talks about kind of this global pandemic, but really hones in on Maine and how we were particularly affected in the Portland area due to traveling down into Massachusetts to go and visit soldiers who families were told it was okay to go and visit. So definitely check that out if you have not. Lots and lots of information on that pandemic. And of course, gorgeous photos as always that we have at our hands available to us.
Sarah, may I add just one thing about the
Yes,
resource
please.
library in general? If you don't mind going back to your previous slide right before the pictures. And I just wanted to point out to everybody, if you just click on any one of your links that you have here so they could see a page. The resource, what's beautiful about our resource library is that you can create a free account. And so you saw that Sarah logged in, and that enables you to be able to save all of your searches. So, you know, if you've gone to any search engines before, one of the frustrating things might be is that you might find all of these wonderful resources, but you can't ever go back to them again without searching again. So if you create a free account, you can actually then go back to all of your previous searches. And then also one of the other features of the resource library is you're able to see how many other educators might have saved that same resource. So it gives you an indication of the popularity. We like to think that all of our resources are high quality, but at least it'll give you an indication that other people around the world might be looking for those same types of resources that you are as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Joe just posted out that Nat Geo, yes, we do have an Explore Classroom today at 2 p.m. My girls are actually hopping on that. They are very excited to be joining up with that. And I will explain out the Explore Classroom in just a couple minutes. Thank you, Faye. So here's the other really cool thing that is going on right now. National Geographic has taken the opportunity to put together at-home learning. And so this at-home learning, not only can you utilize it, save it, use it for your classroom next year, and push it out right now, but it's going to give parents the opportunity to actually be able to do some really unique learning at home. We're all in this together. Starts off right off the bat, says, hey, let's put this into a beautiful package. Let's start learning about how to put together different cultures, support explorers, educators, storytellers, and basically bring in all this awesome, relevant news, resources, and interactive content as it states out. And so if you basically start to, sorry, my computer's a little slow. If you start to kind of scroll through this, there's lots and lots of opportunities to basically see what the actual website has to offer out. And one of the cool pieces is to really start to make connections between a National Geographic explorer. These are people who are out in the field, who are doing tremendous, awesome work. And your students and your children can actually sit here and listen to them, to ask questions, to interact with them, and so forth. So there's lots and lots of great things. It is broken down, which is a nice piece. So there's elementary learning that they're offering out. So it is designed to provide out, for those students who are in the younger grades, some fun things for them to do at home. They get to be explorers. They get to do some hands-on learning. The Citizen Science project has a lot of kind of cool things where students can go in, they can make diagrams, they can record out their findings as they're going out and really playing around with science. And at this point, because we are at home, we're trying to make learning as fun as we possibly can and keep our students engaged. We know that households look really different right now. And so by creating these really unique opportunities, it's allowing for students to do something out of the traditional, and yet it's still tying in geography and social studies into these components into itself. So under, say, geology, they get to basically locate and label geographical features, geological features, excuse me. They're learning about plate tectonics, underwater volcanoes. And then you can see there's PDFs that could get printed off as well. There we go. And so students can collect out data, mark the volcanic eruptions with an X, earthquakes with an O. So they would be utilizing lots and lots of geography in the classroom. So definitely outside traditional thinking. One of the first things that drew me to National Geographic was, how do I basically bring in that outside world? How do I move beyond the traditional textbook, the teaching of social studies in the classroom, and how do I really get this hands-on learning for students that they're getting in other classrooms and bridging in together that information? And National Geographic really offered that out. And so I highly, highly encourage you all to take a peek at what National Geographic has to offer, just because it really is such a fun, unique way of bringing in non-traditional learning into the classroom. The learning through play is a fun one as well. So again, encouraging our students to be creative, encouraging our students to start to make connections to other things. So scary stories, this one's kind of a fun one. Outside the box, they're reading a book, they're watching a movie, and then they go in, you can see, there's a clip from Silence of the Lambs, for example, but they're learning about geographical components while they're going through information about scary stories. Hopefully this will pull up. And so you can go in and you actually can click into these geo stories. Apparently I clicked on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it goes through and it tells you a little bit about it, the synopsis here as well. So kind of a fun way to entice some of your students who may be non-traditional learners in the classroom to get them involved in what's going on. And then the last part about this online at-home learning is there is lots and lots of information. So there's articles within it, there's family guides. A lot of this learning as well kind of has dual language. You can access it for your Spanish speaking students, for your ELL students. It has the opportunity to basically have students kind of front load in information. You could prep them to ask questions. They could take notes during it. You could have them draw out storyboards to interpret the information, and then have them reflect on the information itself. National Geographic is really big about action. And it doesn't have to be your students standing out there holding signs, protesting, so forth, but action in your community to some degree. Getting that information that they basically have interpreted and then having them go outward with it, how they can present it out, how they can teach others. For example, I have been in a huge project, part of my National Council for the Social Studies presentation was on climate change and the effects it has on our migratory patterns of the lobster population. And so we've been looking at water scarcity and how water temperatures have actually impacted Maine, and how we've had invasive species come in and some of our own species continuing to move north. And that also has encouraged students to go out and do some of their own exploratory learning. I've had students go out to the beach, they grab samples from the sand itself, they grab water samples, and basically we had conversations about, what's happening to the waters themselves. Why might our lobster population look different? Why is our shrimp population disappearing, our cod population? And then, of course, the oysters losing their shell, losing that density, and then having those breakdowns of the protection that they basically need within our reef systems. The Explorer Classroom is one that you have an opportunity. It's actually out right now 5 days a week at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and it's a live broadcast. Teachers, you can have your entire class join in on this, but also you can push it out to households, and families can join in. If you're doing it as a family, it will ask you, hey, who's joining us today? You just have to give a little bit of background information. Teachers, you can send the link out to your class, have everybody join in on it. But the cool thing about the Explorer Classroom is that there are actually a couple seats that are reserved for kids to actually sit in with this and do some live learning. So the first 6 who actually go in and they register, they get to be live on camera. They get to ask all kinds of questions. They get to connect with an explorer and have the explorer share out what they are doing. And so cutting edge scientists and researchers, transformative educators, powerful storytellers, there are some really great opportunities on here. And plus you can actually go through, you could record out potentially the information that these explorers are sharing out and then share again at a later time in your classroom itself. Faye's mentioning you can download the family guide to do some learning to the prior session, during the session, then follow the session. Absolutely some great ways to kind of preload in that stuff as well. Thank you, Faye, for that. What else about this one? To be honest with you, we are going to join in for our first time as a family with the explorers. We have learned more and more about our explorers in our classroom previous to this, but I'm very excited to see how this comes out. So I'll have to post out later on how this had went. Is there any questions right now about the at-home, kind of the Explorer Classroom or the learning that's going on?
I will add one thing, Sarah, about the learning at home resources that were curated. They are actually a part of our larger National Geographic resource library. So it's not anything new that we've created. And really why we created these is so that a lot of them are really no tech or low tech. So that if your students are having challenges getting access to being able to download resources and print them out, there are lots of resources in that curated collection for Learn at Home that allows them to get outside, get away from the screen. You know, we're trying to encourage less screen time right now because everybody's on Zoom right now. So it could be even resources where they are using their cell phones. They can download a free app called iNaturalist. It's called a BioBlitz, where they can go out and try to curate different wildlife and plant life that's in their backyards or in their local community. So families can do it you know, together, or it could be a student just exploring. So a lot of those resources I just wanted to point out are really low tech, no tech, and encouraging people to do things outside of just using their computer.
Thank you. There was a great question that said, you know, can you see who's upcoming for explorers? Absolutely. It does list out the schedule of upcoming explorers. So you can see, you can sign up early on to get an idea. Here it is, sorry. So this one here is going to be taking a look at exploring South Georgia. This is the one that my family and I are going to hop on today. You get an opportunity to look at some tamarins tomorrow at 2 p.m. So this is the upcoming schedule. And then, of course, we know that next week students have off for vacation. So keep an eye on that, see who explorers are going to be popping up for that as well. So some really great opportunities. Another one that National Geographic has come out with is called Wide Open School. This one I have been sharing to everyone that I know, just because they have partnered with Common Sense. And if you know anything about Common Sense, in terms of the website itself, Common Sense offers out a really unique opportunity for students to learn in a very safe environment. And so Common Sense had gone through and introduced out in partnership with a ton of different organizations to help schools. And so when you go on this wideopenschool.org, you know that you're getting safe resources for your students. You don't have to worry about parents saying, oh, I can't monitor my student right now. Please tell me that the site that they're going on to is an appropriate website, that they can access out the materials that they need. Lex says, this is my friend. Very nice. Okay. Khan Academy's on here, Scholastic, you know these names. So we trust that the information that they're putting out to us is going to be really good stuff, and it's awesome. So I have been on both aspects of it. I'm an educator, and then also we're a family. And so if you teach the younger students, you can see here that there's all kinds of great things. There's Get Moving. My kids have played with Go Noodle. I think that's what it's called, Go Noodle. It's this Go Noodle. So it's all kinds of dance movements and fun music that they get to play around with. There's a daily schedule that students have as well. So if the schedule possibly that your district put out is not working, this one here has got morning activities. It's got some midday stuff that they could be doing. So really great for your pre-K kids if you're trying to keep them busy while you've got someone at home who's trying to learn. And then your K2 Cosmic Kids Yoga's on here, National Geographic, Kids versus Plastic. This was a big one for National Geographic last year and this year, really trying to encourage kids to think about plastic usage and how they could help alleviate the drastic situation that we have with it. Storyline online, you get all kinds of celebrities who are reading stories out loud to children. Midday, there's an activity, afternoon, and then something for them to do in the evening. And of course, you can pick and choose on here, but some really great resources that are available to all students, regardless of what their learning ability is, as well as their grade level. And of course, always our favorite, the social studies. And so the social studies has curated a very large page. I'm on the K5 one. But you can create and send a colonial era letter. There's ways that you can explore maps and different models. Carmen Sandiego has come back full swing, so you can learn about her. There's games that you can play with it. And then if I go in as a family, if you were to send this out to your families and tell parents, there's some great opportunities for learning to take over. There's emotional well-being as well. The Maine DOE just posted out on their website how to access out this website. Plus, it's also on our Facebook page. And if you haven't checked out the Facebook page, please do. We are in the process of revamping it. We're going through our Instagram account. So we're trying to get opportunities to really encourage others to take a peek at it. Influenza then and now, this is from DPLA, but also National Geographic has some wonderful resources on it. And so cannot speak enough to how outstanding Wide Open School has been to really help parents kind of go through and navigate in these tough times. And also for teachers, if you need those fillers, we always know we do. This is a great one. It's fun. There's a lot of hands-on learning that can take place with it. So highly, highly recommend this website. The RealTime Curriculum Project, this is a new one that's from a current fellow who a Nat Geo teacher who's now a fellow, and this is real-time learning. So kind of crazy. Ashley Lamb Sinclair went through and put this site together, and there's a huge collection and podcasts as well. And their big one right now is, of course, celebrating Earth Day, which is coming up. And there's all kinds of resources on here that are getting posted out literally in real time, so you have access to them and what's going on. There's all kinds of websites that get posted out. As I mentioned, the the podcasts are on here. I'm trying to go actually into this one's for doing pen pals, and I connect with each other. Oops, I was hoping to get on. Oh, this is what I was looking for. So as you can see, it's broken down also by article. The really nice part about this one right now, the coronavirus has a huge one. And so that one's broken down by kind of an Explorer collection. There's some fun graphic essays in here. There's articles in here. There's maps as well. So lots and lots of real-time stuff that's constantly coming out to help students talk about, the virus itself, to try and understand it. We always want to be mindful of kind of that social emotional component, which I know we always are with our students. And so National Geographic has put out this website that allows for a ton of people to go through and basically be a part of it and what's going on. And the last little bit that I would mention to you, in case it hasn't come through yet, National Geographic is very dear to my heart. They allowed me to sit in their booth when I had gone out to present at NCSS this past November when I was out in Austin, Texas. And just a really tight-knit community that is super welcoming. There's tons of opportunities. Sign up as an educator. They send you these great newsletters I get them often. I can post out in their community forum if I've got questions or I'm looking for resources. The educators community is kind of my biggest go-to one. I think you'll see my profile in just a moment. Well, maybe not. Sorry. We'll see. Okay, perfect. And so the Educator Network allows me to connect in with educators that are part of the National Geographic community. And so I can go through, I can post out, hey, I'm looking for this for resources, or I just took this course. Does anybody have any suggestions on new courses I could take? There's an educator homepage. This is mine, where I basically are able to hold out my different posts that I have. And then, of course, these phenomenal courses. And so, as I mentioned, I am a National Geographic certified teacher. The process was amazing. You get to go through, National Geographic week by week talks you through how to approach teaching geography in the classroom tied in with science and exploration. They'll talk about their big platform about connecting the environment in with the human aspects. And then once you get your fantastic certificate that says that you're a certified teacher, it opens up tremendous doors. There's an opportunity for fellowships. We have some fellows in the state of Maine as well, who could speak to what experiences they've had being able to travel the world. There are phenomenal courses. As I mentioned, I just got done taking their climate change course. There is a geo inquiry course that they're currently offering out as well, amongst other ones. So really fantastic opportunities. And I would say don't be discouraged being a social studies teacher. There is a wide gamut of people who join that network, and you really start to feel like a family working together. Teacher Strong is, you can see the hashtag in the front of that. It's basically curating resources around what's going on, really trying to have us connect as teachers in our community, and sharing out ideas and getting new ideas and helping us make our way through this. The Educator Network newsletter, as I mentioned, if you don't get that, please sign up for that. There is tons of information that comes out. There's quick little blips that you can use in your classroom as bell ringers. And then this, of course, is the page to get you started for it. And it just has a couple quick basic questions, asks you to make sure you're an educator, and then they literally put the world in your hands. Geo Challenge is the last piece I will kind of speak to. And so the Geo Challenge is a really fun one. This is taking real world problems and trying to have kids come up with solutions. And so for this one, it was dealing with the concept of plastics. And unfortunately, it is on hold due to, of course, the coronavirus. The GeoB is a phenomenal one as well. Kids get to learn about places all around the world. They get to learn about the geography behind it in a fun manner. And if you kind of scroll past these little bits about it itself, the task for this Geo Challenge was tackling plastics and invited students to investigate the issue of plastic pollution. We of course know that big massive garbage dump that's just kind of floating there, and the fact that our plastics are they're not biodegradable. And so it asked students, hey, how do you fix this problem? What's going on with it? And so it teaches students a little bit of background information about watersheds and plastics, and then it puts it into their hands. How do you come up with a solution, communicate the issue itself, design and create a map, and then the kids get to basically produce a video about how they decided to tackle out the plastics. So definitely check that one out. That's a fun one for your classroom if you have the ability to do that, if you can fit it into your lessons. So at this point, I will take any questions that you might have. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I did write down my email address as well. I am extremely passionate about teaching about this. I love learning about what other teachers are doing around the state. And I hope you utilize out these resources, find something that you love, change your lessons as much as you possibly can to fit in what some of the stuff National Geographic has to offer out.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Faye, for the back support there. I've dropped in the form for the feedback. There's a Google form in there to provide any feedback. Make sure you put in your email and name correctly. And if you answer the last question as yes, that you completed the webinar, it will automatically send you a contact hour certificate. So please make sure that you do all that correctly. Does anybody have, well, I'm going to do this.